Howdy, all you delicious people! I'm here today to review Don't Tell Her It's Me, or the secondary title of this film, that of course is to be called The Boyfriend School. I'm to probably in the title go on and state both titles, because not quite sure what it seems would be the best one to kind of put on here, but I like the title Don't Tell Her It's Me better, so that's what I'm kind of putting on the thumbnails and whichever. But so this film is to go on and be another transformational film that I think is the better out of most. Because oftentimes, when you have a transformational film, most of the time it's done as a joke or as a dare or as a bet or something like that. And I like this film a little bit better. So, and plus, also, you have like the transformation movies like The Nutty Professor, just like one of the guys, which I actually like that movie. It's really very good. If you haven't seen it, check that movie out. Miss Doubtfire, which of course is a very much more comedic thing. Bedazzled, I think, is honestly like a transformation movie that also has like a supernatural element thing to it. But yeah, like we really just have Brendan Fraser's character that is just be trying to go on and try to figure out how he can be the perfect man for this woman, and he's failing miserably till by the end of the film he goes on to just realize that he is to just become a much more confident person and ends up winning the girl over by the end of the tale. And we'll see how this movie kind of maybe is to be possibly similar to that in some ways. But so, because I'm trying to think of other kind of transformational films, I'm sure there's a lot more than that that I've gone on and stated. Uh, but anyways, so we have what is to be this story about a guy named Gus. A character named Gus is to be this cartoonist who is to have been dying for the last 2 years. But then, as it seems that he is to have kind of conquered this disease and want to turn around and live again and want to date again, he is dying to get with this girl named Emily. And so we come to find that Gus, who is still trying to bounce back from losing all of his hair and to be forced to be wearing a wig, is to then try and make the best first impression that he can with a girl named Emily, but it goes horribly awry. And so Gus, who of course is just kind of crushed by this occurrence, is to then finally just be like, well, hey, like, if I can't win Emily over by being this Gus guy, I'm going to be someone else. I'm going to I'm going to transform myself into a Fabio Esch like character that is to be very much tailored by my sister Lizzie, who is to be this romance novelist. And I'm going to go on and become the guy that Emily needs or romantically wants. And so we have Gus, who becomes Lobo. And funny enough, if you go on and you look up the Lobo DC comic book character, in a lot of ways, kind of the same character. We have Lobo, who is to be this long-haired uh, biker coat, uh, glove-wielding man, and he is to be dangerous. He is to be muscular. He is to have a completely different accent than Gus, of course, who is to be a Australian. And interestingly enough, like I think around this time period, we didn't know much about New Zealand people, but it seems that now we have a certain content like Power Rangers or Lord of the Rings. We much more understand, like, oh, okay, I understand the Australian accent that is to be tied with New Zealand. No offense, New Zealand people. Like, I'm just saying that you guys have that kind of accent, but it's a New Zealand accent. And they end up stating Kiwi, which is like, oh, okay, yeah, like I know that from everybody going on and talking about behind the scenes stuff with Power Rangers. But anyways, because I've watched so much Power Ranger stuff, it's ridiculous. Anyways, we go on and we have Gus, who becomes Lobo, and we have Emily, who is just swooning over this guy, so much so that Emily is realizing that her relationship that is on again, off again with Trout is to just be a thing that she finally wants to realize is not going anywhere. And so Emily then is to throw herself at Lobo to then have finally Lobo telling her the real truth. If anybody is to even go on and convince at some point that Gus is to be Lobo, Emily is to just be like, oh no, like it can't be that whatsoever, because Gus and Lobo are two different people. But then it takes Lobo himself to go on and tell Emily who he really is, taking off contact lenses, going on and speaking the way that he normally does. And then we have the kind of very traditional, like, well, hey, like, this is a race against time because one of these characters are disappearing forever. And so really we have to figure out by the end of this film if the two of them really do love one another, or maybe it's just kind of love at first sight. So with that said, I really did enjoy this film. This was a transformational film done the right way, because there are so many other joking ways to do it. And I was to hope at some point that we would go on and have like a billion different kinds of these movies. But unfortunately, like, this is to be seemingly the only one that I could rationally have found. Like, there probably is like the perfect date thing, but like that isn't exactly the same. Or like that is to go on and have like a money making scheme, and I really didn't like that film. But so also, Can't Buy Me Love. That actually was kind of a transformational kind of movie, but yes and no. Um, really, it just took a lot of people to just go on and find out that kid was even alive, to then just go like, well, yeah, I guess he is attractive, and then like he becomes popular. But so with that said, I think it's about that time to just push this film into spoiler territory, because I've kind of already been kind of talking about it for a number of minutes. So I will go on and state that I think this time around, I had to go on and be able to like need to review this in a very different way than I would normally have gone on and done it in prior videos. Simply because the way of which that I can only find this on a certain app that can go on and not easily have me um, do the way I usually do things in the normal manner. So, uh, when we actually get to full on spoilers, it may seem a little bit different, but I'm going to try and go on and kind of do everything this kind of same normal way and kind of remember what all happens within this film, with the cast list and whatever notes that I insist are to have within this, because I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers. So, let me know in the comments below if you want to go on and check out Don't Tell Her It's Me, or aka The Boyfriend's School. Or let me know in the comments below if you had gone on and checked out this film and you liked it in the past, or whichever. That's okay too. But anyways, let's go on and have me state that it is about that time again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie. And let me pause this video, let me get out my phone with all the notes and all the things within it, because it's about that time yet again. Alright, so spoilers now. Yeah, so if I haven't said it already, the grading of this movie was freaking great. I enjoyed this film. And surprisingly enough, like, people can probably go on and state that it's kind of like a little thin on just kind of Emily's story and this and that. And really, you're only kind of really rooting for Gus to get the girl, and a lot of people can go on and probably have problems with this movie, but I enjoyed it. So if you don't like it, if you do like it, hey. And also, a lot of people can kind of pick through this movie and state the problems with it. It's like, well, like that isn't the kind of the girl or the guy that I like. Like I don't like that this guy is dangerous or this and that, and like this is the kind of person that I like. This and I don't like that this movie does that. You can go on it and have any kind of comments of whatever kind of thing. It's fine. It's cool. Like, uh, really, if anything, that is to be the more like, oh, great that somebody had that thought of this movie, as well as also just the thought of stating anything about this film whatsoever about how it's either contradictory to yourself or whatever. But anyways, so I'm also kind of interested to see like how drastically different that this review might go, considering I'm kind of doing it in a different way. Maybe I'll get this done really quicker, or really much more quicker, or I'll probably take forever. But either way, it'll be kind of fun to just kind of see like if this gets done early and like, okay, all right, like maybe I should go on and just kind of do this way for here on out, because it won't take me 2.5 hours for every review. But anyways, moving on. So Liz, in the very beginning of this, is going on and doing this narration and stating all of these kind of romantic like things that she's going to start out with chapter one, and then she scratches that out, and then she goes on to like, okay, this, and then she scratches that out, and she's like, okay, this. So, but then all of a sudden, while she's talking, she starts to kind of put a character within her book that is to remind her of Gus, her own brother. And so Liz is going on and stating, like, well, hey, yeah, like, Gus isn't that bad of a guy. If anything, like, Gus, like, should go on and get any kind of woman he wants because he is that good of a guy. And so, and also, she states that Gus needs to find love. So, we then turn around and we have all of a sudden this dog, and these slippers are kind of coming into frame, and we only see like the fronts of these slippers, and they end up looking like these little animals, and that goes on and gets the attention of the dog. And so as Gus is to come into frame and start walking in, the dog starts grabbing on the slippers like, "Arr, arr, arr," and Gus is like, oh yeah, yeah, just having a little fun with the dog. So Liz comes by and she starts dropping off this food for Gus. Because, of course, since Gus is to have been a person kind of fighting a disease for 2 years, like Liz has just kind of consistently been the good sister and kind of just been dropping off food for Gus, who is to kind of be a recluse and is to just kind of be a person who just kind of stays indoors. And in all honesty, I can understand that kind of guy. I really can. Um, and also kind of reminds me of the characters like Jeff who lives at home, and all these kind of characters that had gone on and kind of stated in the Ghost World movie, or the Ghost World movie review that I did a couple of days ago. So we have Lizzie that is kind of complaining to Gus of like, well, hey, like, why aren't you going on and finally realizing that you can kind of go out? Like, how about you like put on that toupee that I gave you? And Gus is like, toupee? Really? I don't like how the toupee looks whatsoever. But he goes on and tries it, and then he is to do this whole song and dance, and he ends up stating that he is this microwave lounge singer, and he's kind of having this orange juice, and he's doing this little performance for Lizzie, and it's kind of funny. So Gus hates this toupee, and so he takes it back off, and we just kind of see, of course, Gus's bald head. It's like, okay, all right, well, you're bald, so what? So Liz is going on and confirming to Gus, it's like, well, hey, like in time your hair will grow back. And so And also, like, Lizzie is to state that, like, everything uh that Gus has kind of gone through is just kind of putting more character on his face, and eventually it will lead to a bunch of women that will all be swamping him at some point, uh, for for how he is to go on and to have uh, been dealing with what he has been dealing with. So Gus goes on and writes Lizzie off as just like, well, you're only saying that because you're a romance novelist. Kind of really, like, in the very early stages, kind of helping us understand who these characters are. And we also come to find out that Gus is this cartoonist and he consistently sketches all of these sketches. And it's really just kind of interesting and fun how we get like a different kind of character than we normally see in these kind of romance films that is going on doing all these doodles and sketches and whatever. But so we have Liz that goes on and is, or Lizzie, I said Liz, I mean Lizzie. We have Lizzie that is going on and telling Gus, like, well, hey, like, Trish is asking for you. And Gus is like, oh no, like, you are not going to set me up with another girl. No, 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 no. Because all of a sudden we then turn around and we have Lizzie who's starting to look through uh, Gus's trash, starts going through his fan mail, and starts reading all this stuff. And Gus is like, "Well, hey, my diary's upstairs if you want to go on and look through that too." Because Liz wants to go on and try to understand where Gus is at in his life, and also just try to understand the people that are to be the fans of Gus to then have all the more reason to turn around and throw back at him. It's like, well, hey, like, you have adoring fans, and why can't you go on and just easily find a girl? Because there's obviously certain people that like will like say things about you and go on and root for you to get better and this and that. So, while Gus is going on and sketching this balloon drawing of this face on this balloon, so stating that he has like thousands of adoring fans, and so Gus goes on and he ends up stating it's like, well, hey, I just don't want to date right now. And Lizzie's just saying like, well, like, yeah, you don't really want to go on and date. You just want to go on to the fast track of like saying hi to a woman and like picking out uh, where you're going to be buried at. Like, you don't want to go on and do all the middle ground like stuff. So we have Gus going on and saying it's, well, like, I don't think I will go on and like be good to date right now because logically I still look like a nightlight because of all the radiation therapy. And Lizzie's like, well, yeah, like, if anything, like, you don't understand what I've been going through as well as you also have been going through, because the whole entire time, like, I was scared. And like, I just want you to be happy. Like, since you have now kind of recovered from it, like, I just want you to be happy because now I'm happy that you're still around. You're still here. So Gus turns to Lizzie. It's like, you know what? Like, I do realize now that I've been too much of a recluse. And, like, even before, I wasn't much of a Mr. Swingle. And Gus is like, you know what? Like, it would be nice to meet people. Like, it would be nice to go out there and be a part of the world, I guess. So we turn around and then we have Emily, who is going on this date with some guy. I don't know what his actual name is. But so they're going on this date, and we have this guy who's dating Emily, and he's going on and asking seemingly her horoscope. and it's like, oh, are you a Sagittarius, or you a Scorpio, or you are this, or you're a Taurus, and blah, blah, blah. And so he's going on and just kind of throwing out and asking about this whole horoscope thing. And then Emily goes on and state that she isn't a secretary, she's a writer slash journalist. And so after that, we start having this guy who's dating Emily, who is to start going to this waitress and is speaking Spanish and is to continue to want more drinks. And Emily's like, well, yeah, I don't think I want to go on and get any more drinks. I think I've had enough. And the guy's like, well, hey, like, this is happy hour. I want to be happy. And so immediately that is to probably be a massive turnoff. Just like, oh man, like, you can't be happy without a drink. Like, aren't you happy, like, being with me in this date and this and that? So again, a lot of this could all just be like uh, me just trying to be smart and whatever. Just like, oh yeah, I guess you're trying to just figure out the perfect way to just sound like this is just stuff that I would just be thinking for whatever reason. And also, while you date, you make a lot of freaking mistakes. You make a lot of mistakes. You're gonna be a horrible dater, specifically if you haven't done it in a while. But if anything, also maybe you'll make a good enough first impression to then have that person be like, you know what, I want to take a chance on this guy somewhere down the road, but maybe not today. But anyways, so as the date is to be wrapping up here, because it seems that this guy is obviously assuming that this is not going to end with them being in bed together, and this guy is probably drunk anyways, we have this guy that goes on and is to be calling Emily Elise. And as they're walking further and further up to the house, we have the guy who goes on and asks, like, well, hey, how about dinner? As Emily just kind of slams the door in this guy's face, like, Elise? Really? Like, you couldn't have gone on and remembered my name? So we turn around and we have Emily that goes to her kind of superior guy that she's working with, whether it's a manager, superior, whoever. So this guy, bizarrely named Trout. What a weird, goofy name. I've gone on and watched so many movies lately that they have to have the weirdest, goofiest names in movies, and I don't know why. Maybe there was some inside joke to the whoever wrote this movie, or there was just some thing like, well, hey, like, how can we go on and make characters just have goofy names and see if anybody is to, like, just think that is either hilarious or stupid. Because I think a lot of times, I think we can start to see at some points where writers just were either having a lot of fun or really just didn't care. Or just like, hey, I'm just going to slip by and just have this goofy name of this character and, like, just see what happens. But anyways, it just made me, like, look at all these names and just be like, okay, why is this character named Lobo? And why is this character named Trout? And why is this, that, and that, whatever. And we have the girl, who I'm honestly just going to call the little girl, I'm going to call her by her nickname, who is Piglet. Even though, in all honesty, her name is actually Annabelle. I'm going to call her Piglet, because rationally in my brain, that is the only way I can remember who this character was, because of the nickname, bizarrely enough. So that way I can kind of, in my brain, kind of connect the character and kind of remember that, because Annabelle definitely would not have stuck out in my brain. So Trout is going on and speaking with Emily and stating that she needs to go on and do an interview with a author named Vivica LaRoe. Come to find out, Vivica is to actually be Lizzie, who is going by a ghost writer name. And so, oddly enough, like, Emily is going on and having to do an interview with a person who is not going by the actual name that she's going by. And that doesn't quite make sense to me in my brain of why Lizzie would even want to go on and do this interview for a person who isn't even going by her actual name. But then again, we find out that the name connection is just from a maiden name of her family that she just kind of took as a ghostwriting thing. So yeah, so moving on. So we also come to find, as Trout and Emily are talking here, there is to be this lawyer who is going on and being very upset with Trout about his client, and that kind of quickly goes nowhere, or something that I really didn't care about, because it has nothing to do with the rest of the film. I feel, just had a guy who just had to come in here, be like, my client, and Trout is like, yeah, whatever, and just, like, all just kind of gets washed away in my brain fairly quickly, just because, like, what does this have anything to do with the film? Nothing. So Trout is going on and he's talking to Emily about, like, well, hey, like, what do you think, what kind of dad I will be in the future? And, like, he's saying all of this stuff, and I'm going on and just being like, dude, like, if you're going on and having a possibly on again, off again, like, relationship with a woman, I'm assuming that you're probably going to have an on again, off again relationship with a child in your future. Because if you're going on and you're going from bed to bed to bed, you're probably going to end up having a child through that interaction, and then you're probably not really going to be there for that child because you're not really going to be there for anybody. Why he's going on and saying all this? Yeah, I get how it looks, but anyways, let's move on. So, we have this whole lavish, uh, like, kind of hotel or some kind of conference of some kind that is to have on the inside of this building, to be called the Romance Writers of America. And this is where Emily goes on and meets with Lizzie. And funny enough, we go on, and when Lizzie and Emily meet, Lizzie ends up saying what her name is, but then she finds out, like, after kind of mocking this girl and mocking the author, seeing that she's probably a Tootsie look-alike and this and that, and trying to figure out why this girl is to have the name of Vivica LaRoe and this and that. And Liz goes on and be like, oh, well, the name was taken from my mother's maiden name. And then Emily's like, what? And so Lizzie is just like, well, yeah, I am that author. And then she's like, oh my God. Like, well, like, I made a horrible first impression. So, yeah, like, Emily is to go on and make quite a bit of mistakes with trying to figure out that maybe she should not put her foot in her mouth. And also, like, Emily sets up to us right away that she's not going to be able to tell, even though she's a journalist and reporter who probably can go on and possibly profile, in my brain, like the best of them, like an FBI agent, of kind of figuring out exactly who could be this author. Emily doesn't have a clue, kind of telling us the quality of who she is, I guess, in some ways. But then again, helps us understand later on in the movie when she easily doesn't know the difference between Gus and Lobo. Anyways, moving on. So, we go on and have Lizzie and both Emily that are starting to talk here. And so Lizzie, it seems, is going on and asking Emily all these questions, to state that she's just doing research, trying to understand the modern woman or whatever. But really, she's going on and asking this girl a bunch of questions to figure out that she can set her up with Gus. Going on and asking if she's married, if she's dating, this and that. And so also asking like what kind of man that Lizzie or that Emily is looking for. And Lizzie goes on and breaks it down as she's like, well, I'm looking for warm feet on a cold night. And she ends up stating that she's looking for integrity. And that she also talks about uh, that certain romantic fantasies is to just kind of be beyond her, but then eventually Lizzie is to kind of rationalize it's like no, like you are to be that same kind of girl who has this fantasy and so on and so forth. So we then have Lizzie that is asking Emily here. It's like, well, hey, like, are you busy Saturday night so we can go on and do this interview? But this interview really doesn't turn out to really be an interview. Like, the interview is just, well, hey, like, come and meet me so you can kind of find out that I'm this scholar and this and that, and go on and start talking to Gus and so on and so forth. So, as we would come to find that I guess at some point in this film that actually isn't to be filmed, we would have to assume that Lizzie had called Gus and told him about this date, or rationally, Gus just has this get together with Lizzie and Mitchell just kind of consistently, anyways. And, but still, Gus would have had to have known that he's going to get set up here because he's to look at this girl and realize that he's going to be possibly dating her if his first impression goes well. But anyways, so we have Gus who gets out of this car and he's at first wearing this wig, but he realizes, God, I hate this wig, so he's putting on this hat. And so he goes closer and closer to these windows to take a look at Emily, and he's like, oh my God, like this girl is like playmate of the millennia. Like, I don't think I have a chance. And then Gus looks at this window and he sees himself and he's like bald hair, pale white, uh, X number of this and that and whatever that he is to just dislike about himself. Because I don't want to go on and tear this guy down even more so than I probably already have. Because Gus, like, he's a great guy. It's just the fact of the matter is that sometimes not everybody is to see Gus because sometimes people just kind of quickly overlook certain people in the world. What the am I talking about? God, there's some stuff that I just realized that I probably say stupid things, but then I'm just going to keep rolling with it anyways. So we push on here. So Gus is to overhear that Lizzie and Mitchell and Emily are talking here. And so Mitchell goes on to find out that there are to have been certain characters that were to have been made as him in certain books. And because Lizzie would go on and kind of write what she knows, which of course is to be her husband being in these certain roles within these romance novels. And so Mitchell's like, "Oh my God, I was Chance Peters. I was this guy. I was that guy." And Liz is like, "Yeah." So we have Gus that gets back into his car and is to almost drive away here. But then he goes on to uh, bump his car into something, and so he just kind of stuck there. I was kind of weirded out here because I'm like, okay, like I got a little ahead of myself. So Lizzie is going on and telling Emily uh, that Gus is rarely ever late. He's usually on time. It's like, I wonder what's going on here. Lizzie is also just kind of boasting Gus up to Emily here to just kind of say, like, oh, he's a good man. But of course, there might just need to be more than that. So Lizzie goes on and hands Emily this big, huge, massive stack of books. And I'm like, wow, like, I hope that every single one of those books were just all glued together. Because, man, if Lizzie seriously just went on and had all of those books, just, like, grabbed them all at the one, like, I'm like, man, like, how can you not have gone on and just had all those books just flying out of your hand? That is honestly a really, like, ridiculous task to just be able to just hand over those books like she does. But anyways, so then Emily gets all the books, and so Lizzie's like, well, yeah, like you wanted to go on and read all of my stuff to know better who I am, so here you go. So all of a sudden, as Emily is now go on and is to kind of just sit while as Lizzie is to need to go on and help Mitchell in the kitchen, all of a sudden this little girl arrives and is to just be in front of Emily. And Emily's like, oh, who's this little girl? And they say it's, well, like her name is Abigail, but we call her Piglet. And most of the time we call her Piglet. So Emily goes on and she starts to talk to Piglet, even though Piglet doesn't go on and talk because Emily goes on and asks the parents that, like, well, hey, does she talk? No. And the only thing that she says is really just uncle. And it seems that she is to take a liking to her uncle Gus because, for whatever reason, even no matter how many times they end up trying to get a dad or mama out of Piglet, she doesn't go on and state that. She just doesn't really talk, except for uncle. It is kind of funny how Gus is to be a favorite to dogs as well as also to be Piglet, to even to the point where Gus, when he gets to that door, looks into the mirror or looks into the window at his reflection, this dog ends up like just bumping right into him, into his butt. And for some reason, like we just have this dog that just sniffs Gus's butt for some goofy reason. So, as well as also like he rams him in the nuts later on in the film. But so we have Piglet that goes on and she grabs this thing and puts it in her mouth, and Emily's like, hey, like, what are you eating? Like, what are you putting in your mouth? And so Lizzie makes her way uh to also realize, like, well, hey, like, what do you got in your mouth? And so she goes on and realizes that this was a bolt. And why do they have these things just lying around? Makes no sense because they shouldn't be, because they have a young kid. But so uh we have Lizzie that tells Piglet about the mineral oil compounds, and for her to not go on and be going on and 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 having this in her mouth. So as Lizzie is to take it out of her mouth, she ends up putting it uh on Emily's dress, ruining the dress. So then that forces then Lizzie to take Emily into the bathroom to kind of swap out this dress. So we turn around and we have Gus that finally goes into the house, wanting to finally go on and just tell Lizzie, it's like, well, hey, like, this whole dating thing, count me out. Like, I don't think this is gonna work. And so we have Gus that goes on and he thinks he's talking to Lizzie, but instead Emily's in the bathroom. So as Gus thinks that Lizzie did not hear him, Gus goes further in the bathroom to realize that he is to kind of bump into Emily here, who's in this nightie, and Gus is to kind of cover his face, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that you were my sister." So this forces then Emily and Gus to again now make a really good first impression between one another, but then we turn around and we go into the dinner table. So we have them all at this dinner table going on and having the seemingly unusual food that eventually is going to make Emily hurl. But it's kind of just this funny Chinese noodle, whatever, concoction of seemingly this kind of foreign, unusual jellyfish kind of food here. But so we have Mitchell who's just consistently just slurping all of this food up and talking about how he is to have put so much ginger in this whole ratio of food. And so we have Mitchell that decides like, well, hey, like, how about we liven up this whole dinner eating by like putting in music, but then they end up putting the music so far loud that by the time that Mitchell and Lizzie try to figure out a way out of this dinner table, by the time both Gus and Emily start talking, they have to yell over one another. So Emily, and also this music is very like operatic, very opera-like. So again, it's just very loud. So Emily turns to Gus and like, "Oh, you're a writer, right?" Or no, wait. Gus ends up telling Emily, it's like, "Oh, you're a writer, right?" And Emily's like, "Well, yeah, like I'm a writer." And Emily's like, "Oh, you're a cartoonist." And so they eventually kind of interchange and like they talk about how they eventually would come up with ideas, and Emily would talk about her editor and how they come up with ideas, and and Gus is like, "Oh yeah, editor is like, I know about that. I know about dealing with that." Also, like I like the fact that they end talking about how they kind of both become like writer and cartoonist and whatever. Like Gus to have his own story about how he was kind of doodling in his youth, eventually realizing he was going to be a lawyer. But instead, the more and more that he just started to doodle, he then turned around and just became this cartoonist. So more than likely, he was probably like setting up as far as college stuff to probably just become a lawyer, but he also had that kind of side thing of just doing all these art classes and everything like that. So like eventually I guess he probably had probably both things going on simultaneously to then realize where like his real passion was in life. So so while they're talking, we have Gus who is to kind of fan his head and he bumps his wig a little bit up higher, and so now Gus, obviously, if there was any kind of questioning the fact he was wearing a wig, now it's for sure a wig. So, leaving it to the point where now Gus is having to adjust his wig, while Emily is to try to just look away and just kind of give Gus his technically time to just adjust his wig here. So, they go on and they get this other meal, and here's where we get the jellyfish salad. And so Emily is to go on and like critique this food before she even hears what exactly it is, and then when she hears what it is, she then barfs shortly thereafterwards. So maybe Emily probably has maybe an allergy to some kind of seafood of some kind, or maybe jellyfish specifically. Not quite sure. But anyways, but Emily goes on and talks about how the food is salty or grainy and whatever. And then when she finds out that it's jellyfish salad, and sees the massive now face that Gus has, uh, Emily used to go on and rush to the bathroom to barf it all out. So we then turn around and have Lizzie and Mitchell after this whole like aftermath of this whole entire date, and uh, they're just kind of pushing all the food out into the trash. I'm like, dude, you're wasting food. Put that food away in some kind of container and put it in the fridge. But maybe they're just so rich that like maybe they don't do that kind of thing. I don't know. But again, you're wasting food. Give it to your help or something. Like, save that food. Like, or maybe, like, that food is to go on and just make everybody sick, so maybe that's the reason why they threw it away. I'm not sure. But, anyways, Mitchell and Lizzie are talking, and so Mitchell's like, God dang it, man. Like, that was, like, uh, a mitigated disaster. And Gus is sitting on this couch with now Piglet, and like the two of them are just kind of looking on at Gus, and they're trying to figure out like who he is now after this horrible date had gone the way it is. And Gus is or Mitchell is looking at Gus and saying like, yeah, like this guy is crushed and this and that, and like he's probably never gonna go on and decide to date again. And Lizzie's like, you know what, like I don't think that that's what's gonna happen. I think that this is gonna light a spark into Gus, and realize that he should go on and find love again and this and that. And Mitchell is just like, you know what, like you've read too much of your own books. You've read too much of yourself. So, and I thought that was kind of a funny joke. So Emily goes back and is to be talking to Trout, and is to mention how Lizzie is to be this scholar and she is to have gone into linguistics, but then decided that she should go on and write all these romance novels to kind of make a good living. And Trout's like, oh, okay, all right, so she's a full blown scholar and this and that, and like it seemed that she was an actually educated woman, all right, this and that. So like a full blown scholar going on and doing romance novels. All right. So, uh, Emily is to also go on and state that like she's the only one that I guess is not brain damaged enough to want to work for Trout for the pay that he's paying them, and to possibly just turn around and have Trout, who is to hear that Emily is to have gotten maybe possibly set up with Gus, and Charter's like, well, hey, maybe we should stop seeing other people. And Emily's like, oh, like you only want me when other people are to be interested in me. Like, and like she's starting to see that. And so we then go on, and after like this whole conversation between them eventually goes on to kind of go nowhere. Emily goes back home and is to start reading one of Lizzie's books. And then at first she starts to go on and read it, and is to find out about the secret female core. And Lizzie is to like laugh that off, chuck the book, and start reading another. But then all of a sudden she's kind of like looking back at that book. And so Emily all of a sudden becomes hooked and just can't stop reading it. So we then have Lizzie, who comes with Piglet to drop off Emily some chicken soup, and also to just kind of finish up this interview. So Lizzie is to go on and ask Emily here. It's like, well, hey, like, what exactly do you want to go on and talk about? Do you want to talk about like the role of romance um, in the role of romance novels in people's lives? Like, hey, what do you want to talk about? So, although also Lizzie is going through Emily's trash because that's what she just likes to do. She likes to just rummage through stuff. So we all of a sudden find out that Piglet is going on and adjusting this gas thing, and now Lizzie has to rush and tell Piglet, like, well, hey, like, don't go on and don't adjust that gas because you're gonna get this place filled with carbon monoxide and you're gonna die and this and that. So they go on and they have this interview, and Emily's like, well, I don't have like anything to really write with, and Lizzie's like, well, hey, I just had this tape recorder. Why that Lizzie just gives over this tape recorder that she uses consistently, not quite sure, but regardless, here's what happens. So Emily is to go on and state that she had read Lizzie's book, and they're going on and they're talking about um, expectations, and eventually this turns around and again has them start talking about uh, Gus and the outcome of that date. And so, because of course, again, like Lizzie was just talking to Emily before about possibly dating Gus, now here's where it's like, okay, after the date, like what was he like to you? So Emily goes on and just states that Gus is a nice guy, but she is to be like, well, but I'm also involved with somebody. And so, as well as also Emily stating it's go, yeah, like Gus like doesn't really have any hair and this and that, like you can obviously tell. And Lizzie's just like, well, like he doesn't have any hair because he's been dealing with Hopkins disease. And so Lizzie is just kind of quickly write off Emily as like, oh, like, well, like because of his looks, like that's probably why you don't want to go on and date him, right? So all of a sudden, Piglet is just eating a bug, and Lizzie's like, hey, get that bug out of your mouth. So we have Lizzie that transitions into her car, and she writes Emily off as like, haha, like handsome rogue fantasy, uh, like my Patukas that you don't want to go on and not have this fantasy of a handsome rogue and this and that. Like you're just like all the other people that have ever read my books, blah blah blah. So like Lizzie has her eyes opened about Emily and this and that. So we have Gus that is to go on and read Emily in the newspaper, and Lizzie goes on and meets with Gus because Lizzie knows Gus, and so Lizzie is to talk to Gus as Piglet is also there, and Gus is like, "Oh, Piglet, hey, yeah." So Lizzie tells Gus is like, "Well, yeah, like I'm sure you're smitten with this girl, and she won't give you the time or day." And Gus is telling Lizzie, "It's like you know what, you stick your nose into everything, and like you know what, like I can go on and I can like kind of handle my own business. Like I'm your brother, I'm not your retarded son." And so there is a possibility that Emily is to probably realize that, or there's a possibility that Liz is to realize that Emily is to be married to somebody, and Gus is like, well, who married to who? And so Lizzie, in probably her brain, is thinking like, well, like this girl is just trying to be hard to get, and also to just be like, well, hey, um, like you need to go on and figure out a way to have Emily like fall for you. and Gus, you need to become this hero. And so Gus is just like, well, no, I'm not gonna just become this heroish guy. No, 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 no. So, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna do what I've been doing and have a love life. And Lizzie's just like, oh, like your normal love life where you just love her from afar. And so Lizzie is to state like, well, hey, if you just go on and just kind of make these small changes, and the more and more that she states all of these changes, not exactly all that small. So Lizzie goes on and says like, well, hey, what, if you would just go on and just have muscles and just start working out. And Gus is like, well, yeah, I'm having I have a trainer, I know I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna kind of work out and this and that. And it's like, okay, why is it that you are to go on and just kind of just think of this now? And then again, that kind of makes me also think it's like, well, hey, yeah, I did go on and change my life, but then also I just don't have the time for it now. So logically, I should go on and try to figure out a way to get back to the point where I'm satisfied with my body, and maybe that will go on and have me probably take a certain time off from videos to better myself again. and and eventually, who knows about that. So but yeah, but I want to go back into eventually just kind of working out, realizing that I've kind of from going and more focusing on videos, also been very lackadaisical about getting back to a certain amount of weight that I would have liked to have lost. Anyways, personal crap no one cares about. But anyways, back to the movie. So Liz goes on and is to say well, hey, you need to gain muscle, you need to work out, and then also you need to change how you dress, you need to change how you speak, how you wear your hair when you do have hair, and how you chew, how you wear pajamas in bed. I don't wear pajamas in bed. Let me know in the comments below if you wear pajamas in bed. Maybe you were to wear nothing, because that's a lot of times where it seems that a lot of people would just wear nothing to bed. If anything, that probably seems very personal, but who cares? Moving on. So, Lizzie used to say instead of wearing pajamas to bed, that Gus should be wearing bikini briefs. That seems very weird. So Gus is like, well, hey, I'm a big boy now. I'm not gonna be wearing briefs. F this. So, but if anything, Lizzie's like, well, hey, if we go on and if we do this, this will help you get Emily. And so, so now we transition here, and so some time has passed, and now Gus is to have grown hair on his head. And Gus, possibly feeling a little bit more confident, maybe a little bit thinner, is to go on and call Emily and remind her of who he is. Well, yeah, Emily, you and me had that get together with the whole jellyfish night. And so Gus ends up talking to Emily. It's like, well, hey, there's a possibility that you and me can go on to this concert. And Emily's like, well, yeah, I have tooth surgery that day. And Gus is like, okay, okay, that's fine. If anything, we can go on and we can go and see these acrobats. And Emily's like, well, yeah, I'm having a cooking class that night. And so it's basically this girl is coming up with any excuse, just well, yeah, I'm drying my hair that night. I'm brushing my teeth that day. And so that kind of obviously is to tell Gus to just be like, okay, I guess this girl just isn't interested in me, sadly enough. So Gus finally is to call Lizzie, like, you know what, okay, like, enough is enough. And so Gus goes on and calls Lizzie. It's like, okay, like, but I'm not wearing briefs. So we have yet another kind of sketch going on here. And so Lizzie is to talk to Gus and say, like, well, hey, the first thing we need to go on and attack is your attitude. And you need to go on and become this dangerous man who's a lone wolf and should go on and be something or other, kind of like a Lobo. And it's like, aha, right, okay, uh, so from that one thing, like Gus immediately knows, like, okay, I'm gonna be this Lobo guy, and so Lizzie is going on and driving with this scooter. I'm like, what's up with scooters within these movies? I had just gone on and watched the Legend of Billie Jean. That whole movie was all about a scooter. Now we have another movie that bizarrely has a thing with a scooter. I'm like, what is up with scooters? Like right around the 80s and 90s, was that a thing? Is that always a thing? I don't know. I haven't really seen enough movies with scooters in it besides maybe Silver Bullet, but maybe that's maybe a motorcycle. I don't know. I don't know what the heck that actually is. Moving on, regardless. So Lizzie is riding this scooter, all while Gus is jogging along, and so while of course Gus is a little bit out of breath, and this snap because of course like he probably hasn't gone on and ran in a while, and or maybe he has gone on and worked out and just still like it's hard to get cardio in. So we have Lizzie that is to be looking at Gus as he's kind of winded, and he's wearing like all these sweats and everything like that. Like I guess that's a good way for him to kind of sweat it out fairly quickly so he can lose pounds quicker. But then also he could probably get very dehydrated and sick. But so Lizzie is to go on and uh tell Gus here, it's like, well, hey, like you need to start going on and kind of be wearing less clothes because if anything, you need to work on your tan. It's like, yeah, of course, like he's working out, but then also if he becomes tan, he can go on and be even more attractive to women. Uh, but also like it kind of depends. You can go on and be tan and whatever, but still like it all depends. Like you can be muscular, you can be tan, you can be this and that, and sometimes it does work, but not every time. And then also like there's a lot of other factors that just bizarrely work out in the department of getting a woman's attention. So Gus continues to run, and so Lizzie eventually gives him this tape recording of this accent that he is going to have to be kind of consistently over and over again, just hearing and connecting to, which of course is to be this Australian New Zealand accent, because Gus had gone on and trying to do these certain accents, and Lizzie's like, yeah, that doesn't work out. No, that isn't gonna work. So she then goes on to like have him like, okay, you're gonna be a Kiwi, you're gonna be from New Zealand, and yeah, like you're gonna have to just learn this accent, which again has Gus kind of on and off kind of do the accent. So Gus goes on and he's with his dog Taffy, and Gus is continuing to repeat this dialogue over and over again. So as Gus is to be jogging along, we have all these women. It's like, ooh yeah, like come into my car, ooh yeah. So like the same exact women are to go on and now to have like be grossed out of Gus who had gone on and be taking off his clothes, and the women are just like, "Hey, keep it on!" But then eventually, Gus is to be just kind of running around this tank top and this hat and this whatever, and the women are like, "Ooh, wow, ooh, yeah." Uh, More than likely, it would kind of be funny to just hear the whole behind the scenes thing of the fact of the matter is that maybe Gutenberg or whatever like didn't really have much of a size difference between one scene to the other. Like he was just wearing those sweats that just made him look uh, bigger, but logically he was weighing the exact same weight. And then also like I was kind of curious if maybe the way that he looked even earlier in the film, with the whole kind of way that he was looking, if maybe those were actually prosthetics. Kind of curious to just kind of make Steve somehow just kind of look bigger in the early parts of this film. Who knows? If anything, I would just love just kind of behind the scenes stuff of this movie, even though logically I'm sure there wouldn't be like specifically like a featurette from this film. It'd be cool if there would be like a commentary, but again, I think this movie is so rare that there isn't that kind of stuff out there. It would be nice though. Uh, but so Lizzie is still stay to Gus as Scooter and running alongside. And Lizzie's like, well, hey, there's still more to change. And Gus is like, why continue to change anything? Like I am getting attention from women. Like, if anything, like why not now? Like why not go on and try to get to see if I can get the attention of Emily now because I'm getting attention from these other women. But that really still isn't good enough because really, like I'm sure Emily needs to still be reminded that this guy is Gus and he's not making the full transformation. So we then go on to this computer and they're going through all of these kind of demonstrations of a different kind of hairstyle that Gus is having. I'm like, wait a minute, like, shouldn't they go on to realize that this guy is already having like a certain kind of hairstyle and they maybe should go on and give him more hair, not less? Because at one point they were giving him like this mohawk and like all these other kind of styles, but eventually they go on to realize that he is to be wearing this like really just almost mullet, because logically like the hair is still like almost kind of like my length, but then there's to be like this really long thing in the back, so it looks honestly more like a mullet than it actually does look like long hair throughout like from start to finish, when it comes down to just me thinking that this is just a straight up mullet. But anyways, I guess the mullet just works during that time period. It just does. But if anything, long hair, uh, either way, would probably be very appealing to a woman. Moving on. So we now go to this gas station. And so Emily's going on and she's pumping her gas. And all of a sudden, Gus comes by with his motorcycle. And he has this Harley Davidson motorcycle. And so the two of them kind of meet eyes. So Emily makes her way into the gas station, and it seems that she only had $2 for gas that is to be 23. So Emily's going on and sitting like, well, hey, like I do have like a watch here. Like, can I use a credit card? So all of a sudden, the more and more that Emily starts talking to this guy behind the counter, we realize that this gas station is actually getting robbed because the actual real guy who owns the gas station is on the ground, and the robber ends up having like his foot on the guy's body. So Gus enters the gas station, and the robber ends up looking at Emily. It's like, well, hey, like you better keep quiet. So as well as also like the guy has a gun here. So Gus is going to the gas station and he starts going through the gas station. He's like, oh my god, I think Emily's bought this. Like, this is great. And then as Gus is going on here, actually, I should probably call him Lobo now because he's full transition, which sounds weird. He's full transformation, let's say that, into this Lobo character. So I'll call him Lobo for here on out until he's actually somewhat Gus. I don't know. I'll just call him Lobo for here on out because it's cool to just say he's Lobo now. So Lobo ends up going to the gas station and is to, as he's getting this beer, is to look into this mirror and realize that this guy has a gun out. And so Gus or Lobo just goes on and takes the beer and he starts walking out of the gas station. So I guess he doesn't have to pay for this beer. But then Lobo is to realize, like, well, hey, I just can't leave this gas station. I have to go on and save this girl and be the hero, because he realizes that, like, that Liz had told him he has to be the heroish character. So Lobo goes back into the gas station here and is to put the beer on the counter. And as of course, Lobo is trying to figure out what he's going to do here, or what he can go on and use as a weapon to take down this guy. As he's like, well, hey, this guy's massive, this guy's big, and I'm going on and thinking about the beef jerky and all these things that I could use. What kind of weapon is going to come out of this? So Lobo goes on, and what he ends up finding is this, like, coffee pitcher. And so he takes this thing and he bashes it over this guy's head, and that kind of takes him out, but not good enough. So then Lobo has to turn around and punch this guy in the face, and that's what logically takes him out here. The guy goes down. The gas station attendant gets back up. It's like, oh my god, guy, you're going to be a hero. You're going to get the news and everybody and their brother just knowing that you just saved this gas station. And Lobo's like, yeah, I don't want to go on and get any kind of publicity, because then people are going to figure out who I really am. So that's not what he says here, but in his brain, he's like, dude, I got to get out of here. So Lobo is trying to scramble out of this gas station. And so Emily is looking at Lobo, and she's like, well, hey, your hand is messed up. And also, like, your ankle is twisted in this, so you can't go on, and much less drive this motorcycle or get the heck out of here. And why also are you trying to scramble out of here? Are you wanted by the authorities and this and that? And so Emily just takes Lobo and puts him in her car, and they just get out of there. So Emily takes Lobo to her home and puts his wound on peroxide. And interestingly enough, Lobo is like, ugh. You can tell in his face, but he doesn't make any sound. He's like, God, this hurts. And then Emily's like, oh, is that okay? But Lobo has to go on and be this tough guy, so he can't go on and try to, like, really just showcase pain here. So, but Lobo also mentions that he could have probably gotten a bloody cab, but instead he's going to go on it and be with Emily here. So, as Emily is to now go on and take Lobo and put him on this couch, she ends up asking him, like, well, hey, like, do you want anything to drink? And so he goes on and he's like, well, hey, like anything that you would like would be great. And Lobo drops the accent and starts to sound like Gus, and Emily's like, what did you say? What was that? And so he's like, some whiskey. And she's like, what was that? Whiskey. And so she's like, oh, okay. So she goes on and she gets the drink. And so Gus is trying to remember this accent. And he's like, I am Lobo. I hunt alone. I need no one. And so he's like, well, hey, yeah, like, give me something with a bit of a bite. And she ends up bringing him, I think, gin. So oddly enough, like his necklace, his totem thing, ends up getting like dropped into her drink. So he then goes on and rationalizes it that there's a whole reason why like this totem thing was dropped into this drink because it's spirits for a spirit. And so he goes on and puts this little totem thing in this drink, and like it goes on and kind of reminds me of the Major League movie where the one guy ends up worshiping the thing Topu or Toju or Top. I think it's Topu, and gives him a thing of alcohol. And I'm like, all right, like rationalizing this whole choice here. So we have uh we have Lobo here, who is to have had this whole speech on this thing of paper, but as he's to start speaking it, at some point he doesn't realize what he is to go on and finish up saying here. And he ends up talking about a wanderer and this and that. So uh, at some point, Lobo does drop the fact that he ends up saying Emily's name by accident. And so Emily's like, well, hey, how did you know my name? And Lobo is like, magazine. There's a magazine here that had your name. And she's like, oh, okay. So Lobo goes on and says that Emily, it seems that from looking at her, that she's searching for something, that she needs some kind of assurance and this and that. So as they go on and they start further talking, we all of a sudden find that Lobo is going to pass out. And Emily's like, oh no, whatever you do, don't pass out. And he's like, oh yeah, I definitely need to pass out now because that's what she doesn't want. So he passes out. And so Emily goes on and is to just be like, oh my God, this guy, he's so good looking. And so she goes on, and as he passes out, she kisses him. And so like Lobo's like, yes, I did it. like this is so working. So as Lobo is now passed out, Emily doesn't know if she can really trust Lobo because of how dangerous he is. So she goes on and puts this chair in front of her door and is to go to bed. So she wakes up the next day via phone call from Trout, and she's to all of a sudden realize, like, oh my God, yeah, that Lobo guy, like, is in my house. So, like, she tries to kind of quickly resolve the conversation with Trout. So as Emily is to kind of look through her place, she realizes that Lobo has disappeared and had gone on to have this thing on this mirror about you've been a cobbler, too bad you're engaged. And he ends up having a photo of her being with somebody. And he also is to leave this totem necklace thing to eventually have her have an excuse to see Lobo again and return this totem, which is to be a significant thing to him. But weirdly enough, the spot where this totem is to be left is to be an obvious spot to where like you would have had it felt like he planted it there. Like it wasn't just something that she just I was to search uh this thing where he was at and it just dropped there. No, like it felt like he placed it somewhere. But anything, uh now back to now Lobo now going back into being Gus, talking to Lizzie. And so Gus is going on and saying to Lizzie, it's like, you know what, like I'm surprised that actually Emily just fell for Lobo so easily. And Gus didn't think that Emily wouldn't go for Lobo, but I guess he was wrong. And so Lizzie's like, well, yeah, like about that. If anything, I'm going to bring in some sensuality consultant. Also, like, it's kind of funny how Gus goes on and states how like him and Lobo are two different people. Like it's like Bruce Wayne and Batman, and how Gus is stating, it's like, well, hey, Emily kissed Lobo. She kissed him, not me. And like, it's kind of funny, the dual identity thing that's kind of going on here. It's really fun. I really liked it. So Gus is now meeting up with this central consultant called Babette. Very weird to just kind of have this in here, but also it kind of makes sense to have her kind of be in here in a way. So Babette is to have this dummy here and talking about sexual tension, and so she ends up having this dummy, and she just rips off this penis off of this dummy. Gus is like, oh, all right, okay. So, but then also this dummy is to just kind of have, like, I guess dual like gender parts, it seems. I guess for whatever goofy reason here, to, I guess, have this one dummy just kind of be both, whatever this girl's to need to have discussions for, or whatever, I don't know. So we have Babette that goes on and says making love is like building a fire, and she goes on and asks Gus here, it's like, well, hey, like, have you ever built a fire? Like, were you ever a Boy Scout? And Gus is like, well, yeah, like sticks to a teepee. And so she's like, yeah, of course. So she goes on and says, like, the erogenous zones. If you ever gone on and seen the show Friends, at some point in one of the episodes, they talk about the erogenous zones and how it seems that there are 7 of them or something like that. And Chandler's like, oh my god, there really is all of those? And they go, yeah. Weirdly enough, I'm having to connect Friends with this movie. I don't know why, but I'm doing it. So this girl goes on and she mentions the arms, neck, fingers, instep, whatever that is, ankles, and so that's 5. Maybe I missed 2 in there somewhere. So Babette goes on and talks about the slow burn, and she starts putting this tongue, and she's like, and she puts it in front of the mouth of the dummy, and Gus is just like, no, 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 like, I'm not, no. And Babette is like, well, hey, like, I guess you're not mature enough to handle my studies and this and that. And so really, like, Lizzie is telling, like, Gus is like, well, hey, like, you need to really kind of build up this whole thing to make it so that by the time the last page of Emily's book is to be kind of finished up here, like, Emily is to completely be in absolute love with you, and hence why we're eventually kind of giving you like this person here to kind of teach you the ways of kind of building up intimacy. So, and they also are to have Lizzie bring up the whole totem thing of like, well, yeah, like, that's of course the reason why you left the totem there, for her to need to return it to you. So Emily, of course, yeah, she fell for it hook, line, and sinker and is holding on to the totem. And she starts talking to Trout, and Trout is talking about maybe them having dinner together. And Emily's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And Trout is like, oh? Like, so, like, Trout is just kind of a little confused here. And it's like, well, you know what? It seems like you're kind of creating the distance between two of us, or both of us. And so then Trout all of a sudden notices the totem, and it's like, well, hey, how about you have this be a gift for our engagement? And Emily's like, no, 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 no. Like, this is a thing that I can't gift anybody, because from somebody that I have to give them this back because it's the right thing to do. And also, it seems that Mandy is going on and wanting Trout's attention, so he goes to be with Mandy, who we have to realize Trout and Mandy start sneaking around in this film together, and so on and so forth. So Emily makes her way back to the gas station, to the motorcycle, and Gus and Lizzie are now driving to get back to the motorcycle, and Gus is kind of worried about like, well, hey, like I hope that nobody took this motorcycle, or I hope that this bike is okay. So as both Gus and Lizzie are to realize that Emily is in a car by the gas station, they both kind of duck their heads into the car. And all of a sudden, Emily looks at this one car with no people in the car, and she's like, oh, what the heck? But doesn't really think anything of it. So Gus just magically appears out of nowhere, and so Lobo is saying to Emily, it's like, oh, like you were here guard my bike. And so Lobo gets the totem from Emily, and he then goes into like to go into the bike, and Emily tells Lobo here, it's like, well, hey, you can't ride the bike, your ankle still hurts. And then all of a sudden he's just kind of hobbling around on his ankle. So they then have Lobo, who's like, well, yeah, we can both go on to the motorcycle together, and all you need to do is just kind of put your pedal here and this and that, and we'll just start riding. So Lobo goes on and tells Emily here, it's like, well, hey, like you're gonna go on and just show me the sights, even though he's probably lived here all of his life. And so Emily takes Lobo, it seems, to this place for them to go on and just dance together. And she teaches him the dance called the swag, whatever that means. So they go on and they start dancing, and Lobo tells Emily here, it's like, well, hey, I'm not much of a dancer. And logically, of course, that should be the answer for a guy that is to not just be this dangerous and rough guy. Like, if he was to go on and be this expert in dancing, then like that would kind of dispel the whole like he's a dangerous guy. But so the two of them, they start dancing. Some people kind of look in on them dancing. It's kind of a fun affair here. So uh Gus is to start talking to Emily, and here's where he almost reveals that he's Batman. No, that he is who he is. But he starts to want to almost say the words that he's like, I am, and he just says Lobo. And Emily's like, well, yeah, I know that your name is Lobo. Like, I like that your name is Lobo. And so they just start continuing to hug and whatever. So Lobo ends up giving Emily his phone number on her hand, and like, well, hey, if you ever want to reach me, you can reach me here. And funny enough, the same number that he gives Emily is actually just Cus's phone number. And when she goes on and she calls Lobo, she ends up getting Gus instead, and then Gus has to just display this accent of somebody else, like, "Oh yeah, Lobo is off weightlifting. Like, I'll give you to him." But so Lobo is also to state to Emily that he likes her too much, and like that's just kind of obvious, anyways. So again, Emily goes on and calls Gus, and so here's the whole weightlifting thing. So uh we have Lobo that makes his way to uh Emily's place. I think I kind of messed up here because I think here's where Emily gives Lobo the totem. Then I think she like throws it at him and he grabs it, and then Emily comes up with some kind of excuse for her to get out with Lobo and go out again, because she states that she needs to return something to her friend, which is just her returning these books to Lizzie. And so, as Emily is to try to find something to kind of throw together to hand back books to Lizzie, because she doesn't really have an excuse. Lobo is kind of looking back. He's like, yes, it's working. Yeah. Like, we just see him go right in the camera, like, yeah, it's working. And Emily is to make an excuse that her car doesn't work and her car is dying. And that ends up kind of working really well into the third act of how uh, Emily doesn't have a good enough car to get to where she needs to get to by the tail end of this movie. So we uh so we have Emily, we have Lobo, and they make it to Lizzie's place, and we have Emily that hands over uh Lizzie all of these books, and we have Lizzie that's talking to Piglet about a whole wall socket thing, and I'm like, oh my god, this girl's just freaking dangerous. So we have again these dogs that just absolutely love Gus, so they're going on and hitting him in the nuts and all kinds of things, and desperately just running to him and whatever. So they go on and they say it's like, you know what? It seems that only dogs love Gus here, and Emily's still just like, well, yeah, like, but like this can't be Gus. It's Lobo. So we have, of course, Lizzie who knows the answers of what Lobo is to be talking here, but she has to pretend that he's a complete stranger. So Lizzie goes on to be like, "Oh, where are you from, Lobo? Lobo, right?" And we, of course, have Lobo who's like, "Well, yeah, I'm from New Zealand," and he's like, "Oh, I guess like you write romance novels and this and that." So Piglet goes on and is to make her way close uh to of course Lobo here, and Lobo is now thrusting this book to hope that Piglet doesn't know who this is, and she of course does grab the book from him, like, uncle, and or uncow I think is what she actually says. So we of course now have Emily that is to confirm with everyone else, like, oh no, this can't uh, be Gus whatsoever because he has no hair, and because he obviously is wearing a wig, and also Gus has brown eyes, this and that. So, but then also there is to be the fact that Gus is to be loved by dogs and small children. So that's here, of course, where the dog slams in the nuts of Gus, and Lizzie has to grab the dog and try to push the dog away. So Piglet comes with this book and is now drawing with these crayons, hoping that Gus will also do the same. And so Gus starts drawing in a very nice like way, but then he just starts to scribble in the book, just like, oh yeah, I'm trying to convince this girl that I'm not the same guy. So Mitchell then comes in and he jumps onto Gus's motorcycle, or I guess in this case, still Lobo's motorcycle, and Mitchell, not knowing any better, is to make his way into the place like, well, hey, Gus, you finally fixed the motorcycle. And then he's like, oh, Emily and Lobo are here. Uh, as Lobo's just like, so we have Mitchell that is consistently saying Gus, but then he's like, oh, guess. Like, guess what I just saw outside? I just saw a motorcycle. Oh, yeah, hey, nice to meet you, stranger that I've never met before. Who are you? And so funny enough, they're starting to talk here, both Mitchell and Lobo and Emily, and so as they get introduced, he's like, "Well, hey, like, like, Mitchell, you must be from a foreign land. And Emily's like, well, hey, how did you know that? And Lobo is consistently pointing at a shirt that says New Zealand on it. And weirdly enough, Mitchell says, like, well, like your body odor tells me that you're from a different land. And it's like, really? His body odor? Okay. And so, like, I guess they just rationalize in their brain that that makes sense. But also, Gus was just, like, pointing at a shirt that says New Zealand on it, but he didn't get the message. So, uh, we turn around, and after the fact, after Emily uh, and Lobo are to kind of leave, we have Emily that is talking to Lobo here and saying, like, you know what, I don't think Lizzie likes the fact that I'm with you, because if anything, like, she's still kind of pining away and hoping that I'm going to fall for her brother Gus, and I don't think she wants us together because of that, because she still wants me to be with Gus. So Emily tries to go on and kiss Lobo here, but Lobo kind of refuses and then drives off. And so Emily is to go on and just be like, okay, he's not kissing me here. Like, even I was to give him a hint that we should kiss. And so she goes on in the house. She's like, well, like, is it possible that he's either gay or diseased, or maybe he's married? And also, like, Emily is rationalizing in her own head that she is to be possibly engaged, and Lobo knows that, and so maybe she needs to kind of get rid of Trout so she can fully commit to being with Lobo here. I already realized that this is a movie that was to probably be an hour and 40 minutes, and I'm probably going to bench past that, but also I do that every time anyways. So if you have gone on and seen every single one of my videos, you would really know how vastly long I go on and talk for. But I also have a lot of fun with these at some points in time, more some movies than others, or I really just want to state that I just like talking and like to hear words come out of my own mouth. So that is what it is. So moving on here, regardless of how long this is going to take. So, uh, Gus rushes to Lizzie and saying, like, you know what, I think it's over. Uh, and Lizzie is telling Gus here, it's like, well, like, no, like, Emily's just so far gone now that she is completely committed to you, and she's completely in love. And Gus is just like, no, like, she doesn't love me. She just likes a beard, stubble, and contact lenses. Like, she loves Lobo. She loves the Batman character. She doesn't love Bruce Wayne. And even though technically, like, is Gus Bruce Wayne? Debate can be had this day. So Gus is now committed to, like, I need to tell her now, like, before it's too late. So Lobo, because this is technically Lobo still, Lobo is to take his motorcycle and make his way to Emily's place. And as Lobo is to go on and kind of overhear the conversation that is to be had between both Emily and Trout, to where Emily is to finally want to go on and resolve this relationship and break up with Trout here. We also have Trout is making his way outside, and he's going on and making hand signals to a girl that is to be hiding in the back of this car. Lobo thought that he was going on and seeing Trout out here, and then when he looks back to the car, there's no one there. So he's like, okay, what the heck was that about? But then eventually, when Trout finally is to resolve his relationship, possibly with Emily, but it's like, well, hey, can we still work together? And then also he is to kind of want to get with Emily, and Emily's like, well, hey, like I know you're grieving now, like, but this is a little much. So, uh, we then have Trout that makes his way to the car, and then that's where we find Mandy there. So we then finally have Lobo that is to rush to Emily and confess because that's what he was there for. And Emily's like, well, hey, like, all I care about is, like, if are you gay? Are you diseased? And Lobo is like, no, I'm neither one. And says, well, hey, like, are you married? Are you this or that? And it's like, no. So Emily's like, okay, like, so they just kiss, they grab one another, and they make their way to the bed, and they just go wild. So they finally sleep together. So the following morning, Gus is to start to get his clothes in to start to leave, and Emily's like, "Oh, do you really need to leave?" And Gus is like, "Yes," because now he's technically Gus. He's going to drop the facade, and Emily's like, "Well, hey, like, where'd your accent go?" And so Lobo is like, "Well, hey, I need to become an American. That's why." And Emily's like, "Well, yeah, like you definitely have a much more of an American accent, and it seems like so easy how you can to have dropped that accent that you have." And so Gus is finally just like, no, like I really need to tell you who I am now. And so he takes the blue contact lenses out, and now Lobo is to be revealed to be Gus. So Emily's like, oh my god, like you lied to me. So Emily now is to be throwing clothes at Gus, telling him to get dressed, and Gus is to try to convince Emily that, well, hey, like this was love at first sight. Like I've been obsessed with you up until I first met you. And so eventually also realizing that Lizzie was in on all this. And but also Gus trying to convince uh Emily here that last night was the most important night of his life and that he loves her and he just wanted her to love him back, as he just kind of walks off and realizes that this relationship is not going to work between one another because it's just possibly filled with a lot of lies or uh, Gus just kind of hiding the fact of who he was. But ultimately, who he was not something that Emily was attracted to. So, like, again, we have to go on and find the middle ground where eventually Emily is to realize, like, well, hey, like, even though Gus was Lobo, Gus danced with me. Gus spent time uh with Piglet, and so like there are some things that made, even when uh Gus was to not end up being so much Lobo, that is the things that Emily found attracted to Gus about. So, but we'll get to that. So Emily then goes on to call Lizzie, and she mentions how unhappy she is, but then all of a sudden we come to find out the person at the end of the end isn't Lizzie, and instead it's Piglet, and she hits the phone by mistake. And so Emily is now trying to like talk to Piglet, and she drops the phone. So Emily now goes on and speaks with Lizzie in person, and it's like, well, hey, you plotted all this, uh, and Lizzie's just like, well, yeah, but you guys were perfect together. And so Emily tells Lizzie, it's like, I won't forgive you for this, and you need to go on and uh and tell your brother this and that. And Lizzie's like, my brother doesn't want to go on and have me talk to him. Like I've meddled in his life far too much. And also, like, Gus, like, told me the exact same thing, that he wouldn't forgive me for this. So, and also Lizzie at this point is just like, you know what, I don't want to meddle in anyone's life anymore. Like, let's let the moths find their flame, and this and that. So Lizzie ends up telling Emily also that that Gus is leaving for New York, and he's going on a plane and this and that, and like he'll be leaving forever, it seems, because Emily's like, oh, when is he gonna come back? And Lizzie used to say like, well, like it seems that Gus was gonna give me money for Piglet's like college tuition or whatever, so like I'm assuming he's gonna be gone for a long time. So we then finally have Emily that turns to Lizzie. It's like, you know what, like after all this, like, you know what, I can't hate you because you're a hard person to hate in the flesh. And so as Lizzie is going on and to have adjusted a lot of things in her house, she goes on and has set something on her seat here, and then she accidentally sits on the seat without realizing it. And more than likely, she probably is to break whatever she is to have sat on, or probably stabbed herself with whatever things that she had gone on and sat on. So Emily is to go on and start driving home, and is to realize that she is to need to get to Gus. She's like, you know what, like I can't go on and let Gus leave forever. So Emily rushes to try to get to Gus, but her car is dying. So by the time that she gets to Gus's place, Gus has already just kind of conveniently left within seconds of her getting there. And as Emily is to keep her car running because it's probably going to die if she doesn't, she starts looking all over the place and realizes that Gus is gone. So we would then have Emily, who is to want her car to work one last time, but by that point, the car dies. So Emily goes on to then uh, need this motorcycle. And luckily, I guess the keys were in the car, or in the car, in the motorcycle for some goofy reason. And so Emily just starts driving this motorcycle now. She goes to the airport to try uh and get to meet up with Gus. And bizarrely, there's also this weird interaction between this biker guy and Emily, and they're complimenting one another. And then she ends up getting hit with this mud. Don't know why that had to be a scene in this movie. I guess maybe they just needed some filler things that maybe they were probably going to cut later. Who knows why that scene was really there. So I guess it might have been just kind of a little bit of a joking thing. I don't know what was going on. So Emily gets to the airport and she thinks that Gus can see her, and so she's trying to wave at him. And Gus, of course, doesn't see her because he's so focused on uh, his his plane and when it leaves and whatever. So Emily is trying to just park this motorcycle wherever, and this one guy's telling her, "You can't park here," because of course you have the traditional scene of this girl fighting with somebody about not parking somewhere. So she's like, "Well, I'm just gonna go and blah blah blah." So Emily runs to get to Gus, and as Gus is in this line and she meets with him, she's like, "Oh my god, you have short hair." It's like, "Oh my god, you're a brunette." And she's like, "You look good as a brunette." And Gus is like, "Well, I'm naturally a brunette." So why did he have black hair earlier in this movie when, like, because really he did, like, when he was starting to grow his hair back, he had black hair, but then all of a sudden when he changed his brown. What was going on there? What was the I don't know, it was very weird. So Emily is going on and telling Gus that there's no way for him to go on and leave here because she thinks that she loves him. So she's like, don't go to New York. And she's like, well, hey, like, you're the one that I dance with, and you were the one who was drawing with Piglet, and you were the one who held me last night. So as we go on and, like, it, we now have to have this, like, nice romantic moment. Gus is like, I'm not going to New York. Like, I'm going to a wedding at Kalamazoo. Why are you thinking that I'm going to New York? And Emily had said, like, well, Lizzie had told me that. And so Gus is like, oh, like, so uh like, Lizzie was just trying to meddle with us one last time. It's like, yeah, she is a meddler. So we have Gus that goes on and tells Emily here, it's like, how about you and me? Like, we go to Kalamazoo together. It's like, okay, great. So the two of them are going on and hugging here, and so Gus turns to Emily. It's like, well, hey, do you believe in love at first sight? It's like, yeah. So we then kind of find in the distance we have Emily who's in this car with her daughter Piglet, and Lizzie is kind of looking at binoculars, and she's like, aha, like, I did it, I got the two of them together, and this and that. So all of a sudden, also, Piglet is to finally have a decent amount of lines in this movie by the end of this tale. And so Lily's like, oh my god, you spoke! Like, say mama, say dada. And so, like, she's starting to talk and this and that. And so, uh, we then have Lizzie, who is to go on and start to make a beginning of this story about this the man who has had a scent of fire and sheep and whatever, to just kind of wrap up this thing, to just kind of finish where we probably or finish where we started for this film, where in the very beginning of this, Lizzie is going on and talking about her chapter one and kind of wrapping up in the same manner, the same way. So with that said, I think I'm going to wrap up here to just kind of finish this up. Probably not a lot of anecdotes going on within this one, but regardless, I feel like I kind of do that anyways. Uh, but again, this was a nice change of pace? Question mark. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of be doing these very amount of oddball films, and more than likely, this one will be finally the one that no one gives a about. Uh, but also, like, I like the fact that I'm doing these wildly different, uh, huge swing in wild pitches and whatever, and it seems that people are going on and actually watching this stuff, which is great. Because logically, then people can find all of these good, entertaining films that they probably would not have from any number of other YouTubers that are going to go on and just kind of give you these more kind of just generic films and whatever. Not saying that I'm going to go on and state that I'm better than anybody else or just I have a better selection of films, because I don't. Like, I'm just saying that, like, I'm trying to go on as much as possible to try to do something different on this channel. And uh, different is not always to be uh, but also, like, to say different, I'm sure anybody in the brother, everything that I've gone on and reviewed upon this channel, 30 other people probably have done the same. Um, no matter what I probably go on and review, there's probably going to be at least one person that has reviewed it before I have. And also, that may go on and be some kind of strategy to see, like, oh, what could be the best thing that I could figure out to review this day? or logically it's just to be like, hey, this is just a random thing that I found through some bizarre search engine that I just kind of put through uh, like a list of this or that. And really, this one ended up just kind of being me trying to find movies that had cartoonists or artists or something like that in it, and this movie came up. And maybe this wasn't to go on and be the focus, but of this film to be the artist or cartoonist or whatever. But it also just had a good enough movie to have me forget about the whole like me wanting to focus so much on like the story within the story kind of thing, and just focus that this story was just good enough to have me just be uh, all happy about it. But anyways, I'm gonna get the heck out of here because I've talked for far too long. Anyways, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.